Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at the Vishnu Purana.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. And more specifically,
Puranas.
some excerpts from a Sanskrit recitation that we have of it.
Cool.
And we're going to be talking about the story of King Bharat. And it's all about his journey through reincarnation.
Interesting.
So have you ever wondered what it would be like to be reborn as like an animal or something?
Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, I have.
Queen Bharat lived that experience, and we can learn a lot from his story.
I'm excited to hear this.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting.
So this story uses like mythology as a framework to explore some really big questions about identity. It invites us to think differently about the things we cling to, you know, and how those attachments might shape our lives.
Okay, so right from the beginning, we meet King Bharat in the Shalagrama region, and he's already renounced his kingdom, everything that comes with it.
So detached.
Yeah, he's completely dedicated to his spiritual practice, yoga, meditation, and constantly chanting these names of Vishnu, like Vasudeva, Govinda, Madhava.
Those are great names.
I know, right? It really paints this picture of someone who's deeply devoted to seeking some kind of higher truth.
Yeah, it's an important starting point because, like, Bharat represents this ideal of detachment, you know, a king who's turned away from these worldly desires to focus on something more profound. But you'll see even someone as disciplined as Bharat can be affected by unexpected events.
And that's where things get really interesting, because an orphan fawn wanders into his life.
Oh, wow.
And totally disrupts this, like, carefully cultivated solitude that he has going on.
A fawn.
Yeah.
So like a baby deer.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And you would think that a king who, like, gave up an entire kingdom wouldn't be fazed by a little deer.
You'd think so.
But this story really highlights how powerful an unexpected attachment can be.
Yeah.
Like, it's reminding us that those attachments can just sneak up on us even when we think we're immune.
Yeah. That little fawn becomes a symbol of how even the most unexpected bonds can tie us to the material world.
And the text really goes into detail about, like, how much Bharat just loves this fawn.
Oh.
Like, it describes how concerned he is for its safety and the joy that he feels when it returns each day.
Oh.
And even how he's noticing its hoof prints. You know,
Really?
it's like he becomes a deer dad.
Wow. That's powerful.
And so it's this attachment that leads to a major turning point in the story.
Okay.
So when the fawn dies, Bharat is overcome with grief.
Oh, no.
And this, like, intense focus on the fawn, even in death, leads him to be reborn as a deer.
What?
But here's the twist.
He
retains all the memories
Oh, my God.
of his previous life as a king.
Whoa. That's a pretty intense consequence.
Right. Like, imagine being reborn as a deer, but still having the memories of your human life.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I bet that leads to some serious existential questions.
Yeah, absolutely. The story is introducing this concept of reincarnation and suggesting that our actions and attachments can influence the course of our future lives.
So the text tells us that as a deer, Bharat returns to Shalagrama
Okay.
and lives this very simple ascetic life.
Can you tell us a bit more about like what asceticism means in this context?
Yeah.
Sure. So in this context, asceticism refers to a life that's characterized by self-discipline and detachment from material possessions. It often involves practices like fasting, meditation, and living in solitude, all aimed at purifying the mind and spirit.
So even as a deer, he's still striving for some kind of spiritual liberation.
Sounds like it.
Almost as if he's trying to make up for this attachment that led to his rebirth in the first place.
Interesting.
It's fascinating how the story weaves together this external transformation with an internal journey.
It really highlights how reincarnation isn't just about physical rebirth, but also like a continuation of the soul's journey, carrying those imprints of past experiences and aspirations.
And eventually, Bharat is reborn again, this time as a Brahmin.
Okay.
But the memories of his past lives, both as a king and as a deer, remain with him.
Oh, wow.
He acts in ways that most people just consider unconventional, and they just don't get him.
Yeah, I imagine those past lives would have a pretty profound impact on how he sees the world.
Absolutely. It really makes you think about how our past experiences, even those from previous lives, can shape our perceptions and behaviors in the present.
It's interesting.
And this is where things take another unexpected turn for Bharat.
Oh, boy.
So last time we were talking about Bharat being reborn as a Brahmin, but like still carrying those memories of his past lives as both a king and a deer.
Right. And this is where Bharat's path intersects with another king, leading to a really profound philosophical encounter.
Oh, wow. So how does that happen?
Well, this other king, driven by this, desire to understand the deeper meaning of life, he decides to seek guidance from this renowned sage named Kapila.
Okay.
But to reach Kapila's ashram, the king needs to travel by palanquin. And guess who ends up being one of the laborers tasked with carrying the king?
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, you guessed it, it's Bharat.
Wow, what a twist of fate.
Right. You have one king who's seeking wisdom, being carried by another king who's already lived these multiple lifetimes.
Right, and experienced life in so many different forms.
It's a scene that's just loaded with symbolism.
Totally. But it sounds like things don't go exactly smoothly with Bharat as a palanquin bearer.
Well, not exactly.
What happens?
Unlike the other laborers who are rushing along trying to get to their destination, Bharat walks at a much slower pace.
Okay.
Taking his time with every step.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be pretty frustrating if you were the king riding in the palanquin.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially if you're trying to get somewhere you want to get there efficiently.
Yeah. Exactly. The king is used to this certain level of control and order, Yeah. And he's totally thrown off by this uneven pace.
What does he do?
Well, he starts questioning why the laborers aren't moving in unison.
Makes sense.
And of course, they all point to Bharat as the reason for the delay.
Oh boy. I bet that doesn't go over well.
Not exactly.
That happens.
So the king, used to getting his way, singles out Bharat, commenting on his size and his apparent lack of effort.
Oh man.
This confrontation sets the stage for one of the most insightful and surprising dialogues in the entire text.
Okay, so what does Bharat do? Does he try to explain himself?
He does, but not in the way you might expect.
Oh, really?
He calmly replies to the king, and he says, "King, I am neither fat nor carrying your palanquin."
Whoa.
He's like, "I am not tired, nor do I need to exert myself."
Wow, that's a bold statement.
Right. Can you imagine being the king and hearing those words?
Yeah.
It's like Bharat is turning the king's whole perception of reality upside down.
So what's the king's reaction?
The king is completely baffled.
Yes.
He's like, "What are you talking about?"
Right.
He demands that Bharat clarify what he means. He points out that Bharat clearly appears to be carrying the palanquin.
Yeah.
And surely he must be feeling the physical strain.
Right. It's like he's clinging to what he can see and feel as proof of what's real.
Exactly.
It sounds like this is more than just a disagreement about carrying a palanquin.
It is.
This feels like it's going way deeper into philosophy and the nature of reality.
You're exactly right. This is where the story shifts from this tale of reincarnation to this profound exploration of the self. Bharat's words are designed to make the king question his assumptions about identity, effort, and even the nature of reality itself.
So how does Bharat explain this seemingly paradoxical statement?
Yeah. How can he be carrying the palanquin without actually carrying it?
Right.
So Bharat responds by breaking down the components of his body.
Okay.
Starting from his feet on the ground all the way up to the palanquin resting on his shoulders. He explains that each part, his feet, his legs, his torso, his arms, his shoulders, is distinct.
Okay.
His point is that his true self isn't defined by this collection of physical elements.
So it's like he's saying, I'm more than the sum of my parts.
Exactly.
But how does he connect that to the palanquin?
He uses this brilliant analogy. He says to the king, "The body which you call yours is placed in the palanquin. In reality, you are in the palanquin and I am on the earth."
Okay, wait, so he's saying that the king's true self is separate from his body, which is simply riding in the palanquin.
Yeah.
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
It is.
It's like he's saying, don't get so attached to what you see and feel.
Right.
There's something much deeper going on here.
Precisely. Bharat is highlighting the limitations of identifying solely with the body and its experiences. He's inviting the king to consider a different perspective, a way of seeing beyond the surface.
So does the king buy it? Is he convinced by Bharat's explanation?
Well, he's definitely intrigued.
Okay.
The king is starting to see that the burden he feels might not be just the physical weight of the journey, but like a burden of perception, a burden that comes from misidentifying with his temporary role and possessions.
This is getting really interesting. Okay, so we left off with Bharat really challenging the king's ideas about identity and reality.
Right. He used that whole palanquin analogy to show that we might be clinging to a false sense of self.
Right. So where does the conversation go from there?
Well, the king is clearly wrestling with these new concepts.
Yeah.
And he tries to counter Farad's argument.
Okay.
He points to the palanquin itself, and he asks, if the palanquin is made of wood, shouldn't we just call it wood?
Right.
But nobody says I'm sitting on wood. They say I'm sitting in a palanquin.
Right.
He's basically saying that form and function matter.
Right.
We name and understand things based on how they appear and what they do.
So he's pushing back a bit, saying that labels and categories aren't meaningless. They help us make sense of the world.
Exactly. He's trying to find some solid ground,
Yeah.
some way to reconcile Farad's radical ideas with his own experience of the world.
But does Bharat just give in?
Not at all. Farad, with his characteristic wisdom, gently dismantles the king's argument.
How does he do that?
He points out that the palanquin is nothing more than like an assemblage of wood, arranged in a specific way to create a particular form.
Okay.
He challenges the king to find the palanquinness apart from its individual components.
It's like he's saying, okay, take away the wood, the specific shape, the purpose it serves.
Right.
What's left that makes it a palanquin?
Exactly.
It makes me think about how we often get so caught up in labels and categories without really examining what they mean.
Precisely, Farad is showing how our language and concepts can create these artificial distinctions that obscure the underlying unity of reality.
And he doesn't stop there, does he?
Nope. He brings up the example of an umbrella. Take away the spokes, the fabric, the handle, all those individual parts, and where's the umbrella-ness?
Right. I'm starting to see the pattern here.
Yeah.
He's making the point that these labels are just convenient designations, not some inherent truth about the object itself.
And then to really bring it all home, he applies this same logic to us.
Oh, wow.
To the human experience.
Okay.
Farad states that our bodies are made up of these 5 elements.
Okay.
Earth, water, fire, air, and ether.
Mm-hmm.
And that the designations of man, woman, cow, goat, bird, tree, they're all just labels based on the actions and forms of these bodies.
So he's saying that the lines we draw between humans and other living beings are more about perception than some fundamental difference.
That's a pretty radical idea, especially for the time period the story takes place in.
Yeah.
It suggests this like interconnectedness and shared essence among all living things.
Wow.
A powerful message.
So he doesn't just stop at the physical, does he?
Yeah.
He takes on the labels we use for social roles as well.
Absolutely. Bharat turns to the king and he says, you are a king to your subjects, a son to your father, an enemy to your foes, a husband to your wife, and a father to your children.
Okay.
Tell me, which one of these are you truly?
That's such a powerful question.
Right.
It really gets to the heart of how we define ourselves.
Yeah.
So often we get caught up in these roles and labels without really examining who we are beneath them.
That's the dismantling of the ego, the deconstruction of the self.
Mm-hmm.
Bharat is demonstrating to the king that all of these roles are temporary, they're external, and ultimately not the true essence of his being.
Yeah, it's a good reminder for all of us.
It is.
Our true selves go so much deeper than the titles and positions we hold in society.
The king is completely shaken by these insights, and he starts to really question his own existence. He asks himself, where am I? Am I this head, these arms, this stomach, these legs? But these are all just parts of me, not me myself.
It's like the rug has been pulled out from under him.
Yeah.
And he's just scrambling to find something to hold on to.
Exactly.
You can only imagine how disorienting that must feel.
And sensing the shift in the king, Farad delivers the final blow to the king's illusion of a separate, unchanging self.
Okay.
He says, if the true self can only be known by separating it from everything else, then how can I describe it with words like I?
Whoa. So he's saying that language itself,
right,
the very way we try to define and conceptualize things, is inadequate to capture the essence of our true nature.
Exactly.
That's pretty profound.
It is, and it's a concept that's echoed in many spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
The idea that the ultimate truth, the true nature of reality in the self, is beyond words and concepts.
Wow.
It can only be experienced directly.
So how does this all end? Does the king have some big epiphany moment?
Well, the Sanskrit recitation concludes with the king completely overwhelmed by Farad's wisdom. He gets off the palanquin and prostrates himself before Farad, who's still disguised as this laborer.
Wow.
He begs Farad to continue teaching him.
So he recognizes that true liberation lies not in his royal authority,
right,
but in understanding the nature of his own being.
Exactly.
That's such a powerful image. A king humbling himself before someone he perceives as a simple laborer.
Yeah.
All because he recognizes the depth of wisdom in Bharat's words.
It's a beautiful depiction of transformation.
Yeah.
The king realizes that true power doesn't come from external status or possessions, but from inner understanding.
Yeah.
And that journey of understanding begins with letting go of those false notions of the self.
So what can we as listeners take away from all of this?
Well, the story of King Bharat is a powerful exploration of the illusory nature of material reality, the pitfalls of attachment, and the journey of the soul through reincarnation.
Right.
It invites us to question our assumptions about who we are, to look beyond the surface level of our existence, and to consider the possibility that our true selves are far more expansive and interconnected than we might realize.
It's definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
If our bodies, roles, and possessions are all temporary, as Bharat so eloquently demonstrates, then what is the true essence of I?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's one that each of us has to explore for ourselves.
Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll leave you with that final thought-provoking question to ponder. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.